Today on The Riff, Jeremy and Justin sit down to talk about the dark side. Not like the Star Wars dark side. Well, sort of. It's about all of our dark sides. We hope today is helpful and hopeful. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to another episode of The Riff. I am Jeremy.
I'm Justin.
And together we are
Jeremy and Justin.
Hey, you know what? Can we just stop and celebrate
Of course. Yeah, what are we celebrating?
that we're still in this series?
Yes.
We are still in this series, Invisible Jesus.
I knew we would. I had faith in you.
Serious?
Yeah,
Okay,
I said 2 years. Yeah, bring it. Jeremy's got this.
do you think we go the entire, do you think I get distracted by a different series? Do you think I get bored with the series?
No.
Do you think everybody else gets bored with
Yes.
the series?
But I
So what are we going to do about that? Because if my awareness, I don't believe I have crystal clear social awareness, so it might take me maybe 6-7 weeks to realize
it's
that.
gonna be fine.
But then what do we do? What do we do?
So here's the deal. I don't actually think that people are going to. I have been excited. The difference with this quote unquote series.
What's this quote unquote business? It's a real series.
It's a real series. I mean, yeah. But when we talk series, we either talk thematically or we talk like big picture, big idea. The big idea here is Jesus.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm like, I could do 5 years of this and I'm good. And actually, I kind of hope to do it for the rest of my life, honestly. Like, learn more about him. Yep, I'm in. So sign me up. I would like to learn more and grow. So yeah, I think I'm in. I'm good.
Where do you think pastors? I wonder when they started coming up with series.
I think that I don't know.
That's
I
so
don't
weird.
know.
The psychology of a series. Why do we do a series?
I think that it became. I don't know whatever. This is just my thoughts. Okay, so whatever. But throughout the course of just church, specifically like Westernized American from 1980 on type of deal.
Yeah.
I think that there was probably a very insider track to Jesus in a church. Mm-hmm. And the idea of series and thematic elements that you could probably speak to as an entry point or a big front door is probably very attractive to people.
Yeah.
But I think people are ultimately curious about Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen series called Sexology. Come to our church for 6 weeks to let our pastor talk about that.
Biblical view on sex. Oh, bring your friends.
We're going to have a panel. It's like, that's so stupid.
All of these people have had sex. What? You cannot believe what we're going to be talking about.
All the questions you wanted to ask your pastor about it. Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to do. How did you know? But what's funny is, that would be a pretty high attendance.
Yeah, and that's our next series.
Silly.
So we wanted to talk about.
Listen, I'm no sexpert, so we're going to go more with that. So yeah, I'm excited about the series. I'm excited that we're in the series. I'm excited about walking through the Old Testament, seeing some cool things. Now, little side note, and we'll get off this little aside here. But I hope you're taking notes. I hope it's a journey. My prayer is that as we go through scripture like this, that it just makes you more interested in who God is and who Jesus is, and more interested now of like, hey, let me go on this journey of what did this mean. So one tool that I want to highlight is one of my favorite things is Blue Letter Bible. Blue Letter Bible. And off the top of my head, because it's autofills for me, I think it's blueletterbible.org, but I don't know if that's one of those like the correct sites or that's like a park site. Maybe it's blueletterbible.com. But Blue Letter Bible, what I like about it, you can click whatever version you want to go and you can break it down. You got all the commentaries there also, but you can say, okay, what the original language is. A lot of people say, how do you know what it meant? Because we say you need to know, what did it say? What did it mean to original audience, so that now I can take the principles out of there and turn them into today's application. Well, you can go to those. You can go to like any tool like that, and you can see what the original language is there. It breaks it down the English word and what it's translated from the original language, and you can click on that, and it can show you, yes, it does work for our translation that we're reading, but here are other words that more accurately or just as accurately it means. And here are other uses of it in scripture. So now I understand. So that's a tool if you're into that and you say, hey, I really want to study what did it mean? That's a way to go to the source and not start with a third version translation of it.
That's cool.
So, and then you can go to commentaries and say, just click commentaries based on that verse, and they can say, hey, here's 30 different commentaries of people who talk about what that verse meant back then. So, that's a great tool. What I've learned. Here's what I'm observing about these last 6 months. I would say of my reading. What I like to do is read with a Bible open, with a pen and paper, and my computer. If I have those, because what happens is I'll read something, and all of a sudden it'll stop. I'll be like, I wonder why it said this. For example, Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. It talks about, we talked about this a few weeks ago in the message, but this would be a good example of it. In Genesis chapter 3, it says that out of woman, her offspring will conquer, it doesn't say the snake. I always thought it was the snake. The offspring doesn't conquer the snake. The offspring conquers the snake's offspring. And so instantly that jumped out to me. I'm like, well, who's the snake's offspring? So I put, snake, serpent. So then I could just start Googling like crazy, go to Blue Letter Bible. Like, what does it mean by the serpent's offspring? What is that, right? Well, now it didn't change my theology, but what is interesting is like, I can't skip over that, Bema, Marty Solomon calls it the lullaby effect, right?
Yes.
I can't just skip over that. So I'm like, okay, well, it could mean the product of an enemy. The product of an enemy and a spiritual enemy is systems and structures that go against God's best. That could be the product. You take a sloppy version and they will say, well, there's a certain race or tribe of people who are the product of the enemy, and there's been some weird theology based on that. But what's interesting is just looking at that word and say, what did that word mean? Oh, the snake has an offspring too? Who are the snake's offspring, right? So anyway, it didn't land anything really too fascinating for me, but that's what I like to do. Go slow through the scripture. What did I just jump over? Let me dive into that. Is there anything there? And I just go on a scavenger hunt. What can I find? What can I find?
That's so fascinating. I just realized I don't listen to audiobooks.
Okay.
Can't do it.
Because you want to stop and think?
Yeah. And I've been doing like an audit on my weeks of like how I'm intaking information and all that kind of stuff. So I'm writing stuff out, and then realized that I don't think I've read like on paper my Bible in 4 months probably.
Okay.
It's all auditory.
Okay.
I only listen to it. So I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
So as
I've been in that same pattern until about 6 months ago.
So now I completely switched from probably, I don't know, a year or two ago, where it was like all exactly that. Like I have to like visually see it, read it, write down. And for some reason I've like switched, and I've realized that I have been able to like take in information like audibly way differently than I have been able to visually.
Yeah.
So it's like been in a complete opposite for me, to where it's like, well, and I'm walking through the same thing. Like I have been mind blown with like Exodus and Numbers and why Moses didn't get to the promised land. Like that's been my whole like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And that I have read it. Been like, oh, cool. And then when I listen to it, I'm like, oh, there's the difference. Like the whole striking of the rock. Like if you listen to it.
Hey, Numbers is next weekend. Careful,
sorry.
careful.
Well, spoiler alert, he doesn't get there. But if you listen to it, or for me, I never even realized like who was in front of the rock.
Yeah.
In Exodus, it's God.
Yeah.
And in Numbers, it's the rebellious people. So he's striking at different things.
Yeah.
So even though it's the rock, he's doing like, why did he not get in there? I think he probably hit someone, killed someone. I think there was rage, and it was taken out on the people, and not the conversation with God of, I am the one that will take it. Like, hit me. So like just listening to it, I'm like, wait, what? And reading it for me. Yeah. So I think, I love this series.
Just the journey of, well, what if this? What if that? What if that? And just having loose hands, open hands on where does my curiosity go?
Yes.
Because sometimes we think faithful Christianity is no, don't think like that. Don't go down that trail. Like, no, Paul talks about it. He says he loves the Bereans, and he's talking about the Bereans. He's saying, because you take what you hear and you study it, right? You go on this trail with it. So anyway, it's, audiobook. One of the things is interesting. There's a book that on audio that's super helpful for me. It's An Instant Waiting to Happen. If you,
I've heard of it.
Yeah,
I've heard of it. I didn't know. Is it an audiobook?
Well, no. It's no, actually, no. I just
Dr. Johnson wrote that though, right?
Well, that was when he was. I was going to say. Ted, is it Ted? Dr. Seuss's name before he was the doctor. So Ted Zweifel. I don't remember what Ted's name was. Dr. Seuss. Yeah, it was before anyone outside called me that.
Right,
yeah.
right.
But speaking of books, you were telling me about a book today, and I want to dive into it. This is one of the books you tossed.
I've never done this. I've never thrown away a book. I've never done it. I have a thing where I'm just going to finish the book no matter how much I disagree or agree with it.
Because you want to be able to say you read it?
Yes. It's kind of once I put it on my shelf and then people walk in and they're like, did you read all of those? I can say.
Yeah, but you stink and memorize the books.
But I can say, oh, those? Like I didn't want them to notice. No,
I'm
like, those
are some of those.
Giant stat. In my spare time. I always, because I really do. I think that there are learnings from every. So like, Yuval Noah Harari is one of the most challenging reads that I read because I disagree with a lot of the things that he'll bring up or say, but he does it in a way that's challenging that I will usually go to bed or wake up thinking about the next day of, okay, what's my mind frame here on this stuff? Because that's very fascinating.
Okay, side note. Let me just say this out loud. Some people get uncomfortable with things like what you just said because they'll be like, I don't want you to talk about something that I don't agree with. Or or why would I talk about something that I don't agree with? And I love that your mind is like that, is we could read around a text, and to read around a concept is we need to read from different viewpoints of it. And it's not a slippery slope as much as it's a exploration of truth.
So I love reading challenging elements.
Yep.
And it goes back to what we talked about last week, but like the whole idea of comfort, right? If I'm just reading and reading and reading these things that are just like the exact same thing, I'm like, oh yeah.
Reminds me why I believe what I believe.
We all agree. This is awesome. Like, yeah. So I love reading challenging elements. On this side, this is the first book I've ever thrown away because there were elements to this book, and I mean, we're going to get into it when we talk about like the whole, just Torah as a whole, right? Of rebellion and this fracture and this idea of, a dark side, all that. This guy, I'll just tell you what the book is. Okay, it's Grover, not like Sesame Street.
Nerdy.
Did you?
Yeah.
Were you the voice of Grover?
I had a professor in one of my classes who was the voice of Grover. What? No joke. And he was the voice of Oscar the Grouch. He worked for Sesame Street as a voice character.
What?
And and he taught writing. I wish I remembered his name. All I remember him as the Cookie Monster. He was a Cookie Monster too. So Grover. Yeah, but not that Grover.
Not that Grover. Tim Grover. Oh. And he was a trainer for Jordan, Kobe.
Tim Grover.
Grover. We just talked about Grover. No, it's not. It's not Tim Glover. And it's relentless. Okay. And that might be like some people might have read that and been like, that's a life-changing book, right? Yeah. There's a lot of great things in it. But he talks a lot about the dark side of your soul, of your spirit, of just who you are as an individual. And love reading things that challenge me and all that kind of stuff. There was something about this though that I'm like, it is unsettling and then also like not life-giving. So I might be able to read this book 10 years.
Two things I don't want to be, by the way.
Two things. I might be able to read this book in 10 years and it'd be very, very helpful.
Okay.
But there was like a cathartic thing to throw it away. I don't know. I've never done that with a book, but I was just like, what? So I want to talk to you about this. I want to talk to you about the dark side of the soul, because Grover's whole thing, he talks about coolers and he talks about cleaners and the difference between these two and
Closers, coolers, closers, cleaners.
Closers
right?
are in the middle.
Okay.
And how from a cooler to a cleaner, it's a vast difference because of the dark side.
Okay, give us a little breakdown of what a
Cooler is going to be somebody that walks into a space or is in a space that's able to do a good job. So he would say good, great, and unstoppable. That's kind of how he's categorized these. Whether it is a parent, whether it is an employee, you're able to stay in the space. You're able to stay cool in the space. Nothing gets riled up. The job gets done. The cooler, right? You have a closer who's somebody that's great. They're able to come into a space. They're able to take it to another level. They're able to make sure that the job is done. They're a closer. They're a finisher. They can put the cap on it. Like something's in trouble. There's a crisis. Closer comes in. They can take care of it.
Okay.
A cleaner would be with somebody that he would call would be unstoppable. And that is going to be like the Jordans, the Kobes. He also says LeBron wasn't one, where I'm like, this is definitely written before the Golden State series.
That's a bias.
Because you watch that series as a whole where they came back from a 3-1 deficit. He's a cleaner. So
I'm a Jordan guy, by the way.
Listen, I'm going to say Jordan. I'm a Jordan guy as well. I'm just saying it doesn't have to be either or, okay?
Well, LeBron is, I don't want to get into this, but he's sleeping with one of his teammates' moms.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Dadgummit.
Bronny.
Are you
Get
kidding?
Get it? His son Bronny's his teammate.
I got it.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
So funny. That's so funny.
Keep going.
But he talks about these cleaners and these people that are unstoppable, and they're the ones that come in and they run it. They will win. Okay. They will make sure that anything and everything is fixed, and they succeed where a cooler or a closer wouldn't.
Okay.
So I'm like, oh, interesting, cool. But then he talks about that part. Like we make a joke about LeBron sleeping with Bronny's mom, which is his wife. Yeah. That's why it's funny. But he brings up all of these athletes and he brings up all of these situations to where an unbridled dark side is what leads to success. Because you have this mentality.
You didn't hear that about college.
You did. You have this mentality to where it's a win at all cost. Yeah. I don't care what you think. Mm-hmm. I will destroy you. I will step on your throat and I will get what I want. And that's how you become successful. And it's looked down on within this culture. But I just really was very disturbed. Like it was missing for me this. Every action that you take impacts other people that are not just in your space. Like I really do believe in the connectivity and the spirituality of everything. Like we are all connected in some way, shape, or form. Just scientifically. Like matter is neither created nor destroyed.
Okay.
Think about that just for a minute.
I'm not even good at science.
Okay. Neither created nor destroyed. From dust to dust. Mm-hmm. Like the dust that makes me up was something, like just scientifically. Like we're not talking theologically or so don't get hung up on some evolutionary thought or a timeline that you have. But just from a scientific standpoint, I am made up of things that other people were made up of, or that the earth, we're all connected in this way that's so tied together to where it was so dismissive of the divinity of just people and spaces that for some reason it felt so good just to throw the book away. And I might buy it again in 10 years. That's what I'm saying.
It wasn't like something you wanted to give to someone. Say, this isn't doing it for me, but maybe this will help you.
It'll help you. So I want to talk to you just about, we've talked about this. One of the questions that we bring up in our interview process is, what's a piece of criticism that you've ever received that you really had to struggle with because it might be true, right? And those are the pieces where when you look inside of yourself, there is Star Wars style, there's some light, there's some dark, there's all of these pieces that make you you. Right. What do you do with that dark side? Bridle it, shut it out, let it run wild, like old Grover once. What is it that you look at? Because I do think it is helpful. There is power in it, right? But what is it? What is it? What is it and how do you handle it?
Yeah, I think the idea that I have, the old cartoon of I've got a demon on one shoulder and I've got an angel on the other, and there's that part of me. I think I believed that at some level I've got, in scripture, especially older translation would say spirit and flesh. And that would be our version of
light
that.
and dark.
Right?
Like, yes. Yeah.
So all that. And I do believe conceptually it's a helpful way to understand. I believe less that it's two sides of me, and I believe more that it's two choices that I have. So when I'm that caricature or that cartoon could teach me to do the right thing, but teach me the wrong reason. Meaning, I don't think that dark side of me is not me. I think that the negative part of that is me not redeeming and leveraging, but those are created gifts. Those are created energies. Those are created parts of me. And so the goal of Christianity is not to ignore that part of me that will have a negative impact. It's to embrace all of me and be aware of the impact. And so how do I take all of me? And so, because if I try and compartmentalize, I'm going to get triggered, right? I'll get triggered. And all of a sudden now, how embarrassing is it when this part of me wakes up and takes over? So it's not, this is a part of my life that I have to ignore. I have to lean into and say, well, why is that part of my life giving me energy in that direction? How do I change the direction of that part of me? Not the awareness of that part of me. I don't know. So for me, I feel like if it's in you, it's in you. And I'm not saying, hey, the sinful nature inside of us, let it run wild. But I'm saying there's a sinful way, there's a sinful direction for any part of my nature. There's a sinful direction for my mind, for my heart, for my passion. And so I don't need to compartmentalize my life. I need to submit every part of my life. And then my direction goes a different way. So that's kind of what I think.
And I think that's a helpful element. Like when somebody is either triggered or dealing with something that might be dark or something that might be non-life-giving. He says something in the book, and this is what made me like, well, I think I'm done. He's talking about an athlete, and he talks about the affair that they had. And he talks about how it's just between him and his wife. So get off his back. It's just his dark side coming out. And I'm like, it's not just between them. It's bigger. We're connected in a different way that you're not saying. And this is not helpful, at least for me right now in the season, right? Like it's just not. And I'm in a space right now. I work at a church, and there's quite a few news articles about that exact thing.
Yeah.
Where I'm like,
with church people,
church leaders.
And
I'm like, it's not just between them. It's not It's not like let it run wild type of feel, and that's where success. Like it's just a product of it. It's not. I'm learning a lot from a guy named Joram Mosensen. And he is in the Netherlands.
Is that a J, but you pronounce it differently?
That's why. It's a Y.
Just because.
Yeah, just because. Joram.
Okay.
I am wired hot. I know that. I've had counseling. I have anger, like as a very like deep emotion inside of me. And
Do you think that's a positive or negative?
I always thought it was negative, and I always thought like harness it, hide it. And then if you ever worked with me and my dad, like on a site, he'd be like, "You're not harness it, bro." Like that's not. It seems like you're kind of stuffing that one down, and it is erupting because what's coming out of your mouth is very offensive. So I knew, like, I'm like, well, hiding it and stuffing it isn't like the key. Mm-hmm. But I also know that, like, as I stuffed it, like, it would just come out. Where I'm like, well, unbridled anger is also not helpful. And he talks about how anger, exactly what you're saying, right? Like, it's a part of you. It's a beautiful part of you. So he's like, I think anger is just an amazing emotion. Because, and he brings up this like whole analogy of bears, and he talks about the mama bear, and he's like, when you see the mama bear rise up and growl and yell out, it's usually because she's got a cub right behind her. And he's like, that's what your anger is. Your anger is a protector. There's something that's sacred inside of you that you hold so dear that you do not want anyone to hurt. So he's like, so what's the little cub inside of you that you're trying to protect? So that, like, when you think of it that way, my anger takes a completely different angle to where I can now get really angry, but focus it intensely into what am I trying to protect? What am I afraid of? And who am I afraid of? Like, because that's what my anger actually is. And then it's helpful. Like, it's helpful in settings with North Point, or it's helpful in settings now with my dad's business, or in those spaces. And I can stay calm, cool, and collected, but the anger is still there and driving. So when he says that, I'm like, what? And it makes sense. So how have you seen, like, how do you, because I've been with you a lot, and you're very, like, you've got emotions, right? That range.
Very expressive.
But one of the great things is you're kind and you're thoughtful. And I've seen you get mad, and I've seen you get angry, and I've seen this, like, but you never, ever let it, like, just go wild. And that's one of the reasons I just love, like, learning under your leadership. It's like, yeah, that's it. Like, you've got the passion, but you've also got the control. So how have you, like, formed that and shaped that?
Well, part of it is not in a healthy. So it's interesting. So one is an unhealthy way that has actually made it look like I'm healthy is I'm very concerned about my image, right? I drive better when there's an officer behind me. Like, I 10 and 2, check my rearview mirror.
Is that why you have a picture of a cop car in your rearview mirror? I knew it. I knew it.
So even when I'm upset, there's a part of me that is aware of, like, hey, how I handle this is a test of my leadership. And that's not the pure part. That's just I don't want to look like a bad leader. Right? So even that looks like the angel on the shoulder, but it's feeding a pretty selfish side. So there's part of that. The other part of, so I got to be careful because the result might look the same. What I need to be careful of, I'm not doing it to even look good. I'm doing it because I'm trying to surrender and say, this is meekness. This is strength under control. And so I know the difference is if I'm posturing myself or crafting those words so that the person that I'm frustrated with is like, doggone it. Even when he's mad, he's just so dang likable, right? When that's an arrows pointed in. Or if I am pointing those arrows out, hey, I want to know. And it's not about me at all. That's when, for me, and it might look the same, I was going to say from a distance, but even up close. But I know the difference of when I'm saying, listen, I have got a wide range of emotions right now, and I need it when I need to do the right thing, not look like the right leader. And so if we go back to that question that you had asked earlier, what's the truth about me? One of the things that Leanne and I have had a conversation about many times is the reality that I can have my guard down with her and be short, use my personality in a way that is cutting, not uplifting. And I've done that with her, and we've had to have conversations about, why would you do that with me? You would never do that with Justin. You would never do that with a congregation member. And, part of that is just that real evaluation of, like, I can't say, I do to you. Like, I'm like, you're right. Why would I be sloppy here? And that's where I say, go back to, like, because no one else is going to see it. And it's not going to hurt my leadership cred. Nope, just hurt my wife. And then I have to look at that and be like, ugh, I don't want that. So now this isn't even a self-management tool of, let's train this guy not to come out so it doesn't ruin this image I'm trying to portray. It's, Jesus, may the words of my mouth, may the meditation of my heart be pleasing and acceptable. Let the ones who will feel the weight of my words be dignified. So for me, it's like, it's a learning process. So I would say, am I great at that? I want to be better at it. Leanne would know the most, right?
Which is crazy because she's coming in for the next podcast.
We're not there yet. It's still a learning curve.
But I think it's right on exactly what I would want to hear from a leader, that it's an understanding that like what goes on between you and Leanne is not between you and Leanne.
Right.
It is.
Yeah.
But there are wider implications because we're all connected. Like
Right.
it's, yeah.
That my words have the power. So my strengths and my ability. So we go back to that book. My ability on the court. If I have to compartmentalize that to the core, I won't have the energy. But if I allow my dark side to just reign, then that fuels the energy that I need for this court. And if I'm successful enough here, then everyone else has to put up with it there because this is what makes me me. We call those dictators, like for real in politics. We call those tyrants in the business field. Because if they're good enough in the game of business, then everyone's like, well, yeah, but that actually, it's not the personality that makes you good. It's not being a jerk and knocking people over that makes you good. It is that meekness, that harness, and it's not compartmentalized, but it's a funneled. Am I using all this energy towards others or am I using it for me? And if you're using it for others, then yeah, go wild. You're using it for others outside of, but so less angels on both shoulders and more a window into your soul and say, God, this is part of me. And even the best parts of me, if they're for me, they can undo me, right? So it's like, I've got to point the arrows out.
And I think, yeah. And I think that goes hand in hand what we've been talking about in the past, like the stuff that I was going through with like Exodus and Numbers, specifically in Bema, they talk a lot about you have two choices, especially in that because it's a game of sticks. Like it's Pharaoh's stick and it's Moses' stick. And one is kingdom and one is shalom.
Yep.
And I'm like, everything that Grover's talking about, I'm like, that's just the stick of the kingdom. Like that's just like, that's empire. Like
if you want to run an empire, it's going to be over people.
This.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, I don't want that rod. I don't want that stick. I don't want the empire kingdom thing. I want like his kingdom. I want the shalom one.
Yeah.
So I think that might be why I threw it away too. Cause I'm like, I have two very opposite things I'm reading and I have gravitated towards one. And if you've read Relentless and at the end of it, he comes back and then he like redeems everything, will you let me know? Cause I don't know if the garbage has come this week, but if it ends up being a great read, I'd really like to save $19 Tuesday.
Tuesday?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it really messes me up because they just changed. It used to be Sunday, which was a great routine, get home. But now I like think I got to take it out. And Jamie was like, no, not now. But then like this week, this week, we got a ton of trash in our garage right now. Totally forgot.
Are you serious?
Yeah, because I was going to take it out Sunday. I was ready. It's not like I'm willing.
Huh.
I know.
Yeah, that doesn't fly in our house. I mean, you're going to have to make a trip to North Springfield and dump it off at the refuge, right? Because just to think about what you've done. I mean, that's not even cool. So you got a mama bear, that family. And part of being a mama bear, Justin, is to take out the trash. So
I know.
All right. Well, I like it. We'll never know how that book ends. So,
No.
And Grover, Tim Grover, if you're listening,
He probably is.
Yeah. Don't be offended.
Don't be offended. No.
Be thankful that we talked about you.
Right. And I learned some things. I have a disagreement. It was cathartic, and you're actually helping me. I'm processing some things. So you know what? Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Well, hey, Riff listeners, hope you have a great week, and glad to have you with us this week. And Justin, I can't even wait to think what we're going to riff about next week.
We get into April.
Yeah.
We're getting close to Easter.
Yeah, well, that's coming up too. So
I love it.
I like it. All right, love you too.
Nope.
All right, we'll see y'all later.
Oh, gosh.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Riff. We'll have a brand new episode every week, wherever you find podcasts.